Welcome to Minutes by Minutes. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And we're here to talk about what goes on in the township, the village, you know, those government entities that make laws and regulations that affect you out there.
That's right. And whether you live in the village of Leonard, the village of Oxford, Oxford Township, or Addison Township, these are the people that you elected, and the commissions and the committees that make decisions that directly affect you, whether you attended that important meeting or not. And that's why we're here.
Partially. We also, one of us, sets rumors, makes rumors, produces rumors, and more rumors.
I love rumors.
Right. So,
and you confirm them.
Right. And you folks out there, you need to decipher the difference between the rumor and the real thing. The other thing, too, is that humor. There's humor in these political meetings, and if you're not there, believe me, you'll know that that humor will come back and bite you.
Sometimes the humor is up here, and sometimes the humor is down here.
Yes, it bubbles from the bottom to the top, and guess who's at the top? You folks. Okay, right.
As in the cream.
You're right. Let's talk about a couple of meetings, shall we?
Sure.
It came up last week. One of them is the Oxford Board of Trustees meeting.
Ah, a lovely one.
Yeah, it's a good one. And Oxford Village Council meeting. That's also another good one. Okay. And by the way, just want to remind folks out there that November 8th is general election day. So make sure you get out and you vote. Otherwise, you know that humor we talked about?
You'll never get elected.
Right. May never get elected. Right. So anyway, let's talk about the Oxford Board of Trustees meeting. Of course, Bill Dunn is the supervisor of the township, and he leads this meeting. Sue Bellairs is on that board, Buck Kreiderman and Patty Durr, along with Jack Curtis. You will have the clerk, which is Curtis Wright, and the treasurer, Joe Ferrari.
Right.
Right.
Good group.
Good group of guys. And I tell you what, Bill Dunn does run a ship-shape meeting.
Yes.
Does a good job.
Nothing gets out of hand.
Yeah, right. And he also sticks to the detail and the schedule and, you know, what's on the agenda. So let's talk about, they did the Pledge of Allegiance. Got that out of the way pretty much. Well, you don't really want to get out of the way. You want to feel the honor there. And then, of course, they went into the agenda for approval. And Curtis Wright usually reads the agenda and gets approval on it, and he did that. He said that there had to be one amendment to an agreement or a memorandum for the fire department. They had to be included. And also on the schedule is a company called PMC Incorporated. And the purpose of that meeting, or that particular group, is to propose different TV services other than OCTV. And so that was put on the agenda for later on in the meeting. Hubbard Spring water main is another issue about grants, and that'll be on the additional information sheet. They removed two items that were to be viewed, and that was the ALS fund, ambulance alert fund, and also the fire EMS fund to be delayed until the next meeting. Okay.
All right.
So we got that out of the way. They said they handled the consent agenda, approved, went through quickly. Public comment. They have a gentleman called Kevin Snell, who is the Firemen's Union president, and he spoke. And oh no, it's a good thing. Kevin wants to bring to the public, you out there, the thing that they're collecting kits for child ID.
Oh, great thing.
Kits, and each
Is
one has.
that where they take the DNA swab?
They do.
Okay.
They take that. They take pictures. They take all kinds of things, strand of hair, you know, for identification, and sample, fingerprints, all those kind of things. And it's a kit that you put together, and you, as the parent or guardian, will keep this information. And just in case anything happens where your child becomes missing, this helps police department and law enforcement find your child much more quickly.
Very good program.
It is, but he needs help, and he's saying, you know, that we're collecting funds, and he said right now they have a fundraiser. They just completed one, and they're going to have another one at Collier's Lane on October 30th. Now remember that, October 30th at Collier's Lane, and also they're going to have one on October 12th at Buffalo Wild Wings.
I would take it that this is for the purchase of these kits.
Right, and they're they're $10,000 short of being able to provide a kit for every child in Oxford Township.
Now, what qualifies as a child?
Well, that's a good question. I have no idea. Take a note. What? You don't take notes anymore?
I've given up.
Okay. Yeah, that was a very good question. I really don't know. I'm suspecting probably somebody under 16.
Okay.
Yeah. After you're 16,
Minor.
minor, a
Okay.
minor.
There we go.
Yeah, right. Got it. Okay, we'll say it is
Get
anyway.
it? Got it?
Is this a
Good.
rumor?
Yeah, get it? Got it? Good.
Could be.
Okay.
You folks pay attention to this one. But anyway, you want to attend this because it's a very good, cause. Let me see. Bill Dunn and Jack Curtis were thanked for their donations. In other words, they reached down in their pockets, these two guys, as representatives of your community, and donated to this fund. So
Very nice.
very nice. Yep. Good job, guys. Also, PMVC, who's Ken LaPlante, was the next one, I
Laplace.
believe. Laplace. Ken Laplace. Thank you. Was on the non-agenda items continued. He wanted to continue that. Exchange became apparent between the chairperson Dunn and Mr. Laplace, in which Ken said that, or Mr. LaPlante said,
Laplace.
I got LaPlante, must be Laplace.
It is
Can I
Laplace.
change his name?
Yes, you can.
I can?
To Laplace.
Smith. Change his name to Smith. No, Ken LaPlace said that he wanted to speak, at this time, and Bill Dunn said that he was going to be put on the docket, for the meeting tonight,
With the agenda.
the agenda, one of those things. He's going to do that, and he did. He put him on, and he says, "Well, wait a minute, I'm not prepared." And Mr. Dunn says, "Well, we'll cover that when we get to it."
Oh.
So anyway, so they went on with the meeting. There's another gentleman that spoke up, during this public portion of the meeting where you speak about non-agenda items. Ted Jackenbelly is his name, and he said, "I live on a road," he said, "in the township," and he said, "I have a complaint." He said, "Part of the road has been gravelled." He said, and they did a great job providing gravel and grading. He said, "Now, they stopped halfway down the road," and he said, "On my end," he said, "I have these big holes, and it's not graded. And not only that, but the gravel is pretty much eroded also."
Oh.
And so Bill Dunn said, as a supervisor, he said, "I'll tell you what." He said, "We'll cover this later." He said, "I will meet you in my office." He said, "We'll get this resolved."
Good.
And so that's the way Bill Dunn does things.
Proactive.
Okay? And the Board of Trustees. So that was pretty much covered. Fire Department, Dave Creech, Assistant Chief, was involved in the memorandum he brought forward for the Firefighters Union. Apparently there had to be an addendum to it, and that was quickly approved. So it's just a technical thing or a clerical thing. Elkview grant. There was a grant outstanding that they were shooting for, and Bill Dunn said, "Look," he said, "I'm not going to spend any more money." He said, "We're not going to spend any more money."
This is Elkview Estates on Baldwin Road?
It is. And he said
They had a
that
big drainage problem, didn't they?
they did, but he said the cost keeps going up and up and up.
For the
He's-
drainage?
Well, for the fix for it, I guess.
Oh.
And he said, "I'm not going to advocate any additional funding, for this until they provide the amount of money required, the cost."
Is it a shared thing?
It is. And he said, we need to know this, he said, before we move any further. And he said he would not approve it. So actually a vote was taken, it was not approved, although Joe Ferrari and Buck Kreiderman said no, they would like to approve and go forward with it. Bill Dunn said, "No, you can't until you get the information." So
That's been ongoing for, years.
I understand it has been. So anyway, I think Bill Dunn is on the right track here.
Okay.
He needs to know how much it's going to cost you folks out there. With that, we'll be back right after this.
Canine Stray Rescue does just that. Rescue stray dogs for new families. But they need your help. Become a volunteer at Canine Stray Rescue League of Michigan. Take dogs for walks, help them socialize with others, and help them get adopted. Fill out an application and help a family add a new member today. There's a lot of history to Oxford. Hidden around every corner, deep in every crack, and sometimes right in front of you, waiting to be discovered. If you just dig a little, you'll find the great history of our beautiful town. Welcome to Historic Oxford.
Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And we are talking about what? We are talking about the Oxford Board of Trustees. And the next thing on the agenda was the to provide PMVC, Ken LaPlante.
LaPlace.
I keep wanting to say this, so you say replace. I love it when you say that. Okay, Ken LaPlace. It was his turn to speak, and he said, I'm not prepared. So Chairman Dunn says, well, then you're going to see what's going to happen. So what happened is a motion was made by Joe Ferrari to keep OCTV services as they are intact, and that was the end of it. So that took care of that rather quick and sweet. So unprepared people, if you come before the board, you're not necessarily going to get a chance to get anything done.
And you thought the Planning Commission was bad.
Yeah. The Planning Commission is pretty darn good,
Well, they are, but they want their stuff.
Yeah.
Their T's crossed and their I's dotted.
They do. Yep. And that's another meeting that you folks want to make sure you watch, because that does affect you folks out there in terms of residents and what's being done. Now, of course, the Planning Commission itself, they don't make the regulation themselves, or they don't make the adjustments
simply
themselves.
interpret it.
They interpret it, and then they send recommendation to the trustees, who then make that decision. Right?
Right.
Okay. Township water main was under concern on M24 in Hubbard Springs. Apparently,
Where's Hubbard Springs?
I'm not sure where it is. It's across from 24 somewhere. I think down here somewheres.
Is it over by Myers somewhere? Or?
You know what? Take a note. We'll find out next time. Another note. Here we go. Okay. So anyway, what happened apparently is they ran a water line some years ago across 24 for development purposes. And actually, the only thing that has been developed in that area is the Hubbard Springs development. And they need a hookup at this time, but they're going to be paying for everything that they expected along that line, which they felt was unfair. So, and of course, the board, they also felt it was unfair too. So as far as hookup fees and that kind of thing, they're going to, I think, let that go, because they're already paying a pretty good price, for that line. So anyway, next thing they talked about was a grant, and they just needed a grant for MDQ in Oxford Township for...
That's a business?
No, it's Michigan Department of Quality.
Water quality.
Grant, water quality grant. And they just need an approval. There's no cost, to do this. It's just a matter of getting the agreement, from the people on the board. So that was approved immediately. No cost is a good thing out there. Okay. Employee Review Board. Bill Dunn said we need a employee review board established of 2 representatives that will sit on this board, and they did appoint Buck Kreiderman and Sue Bellairs to do that, and they're going to review the township employees. So they will review them one by one.
Would this include Public Works, or would it include Parks and Rec, or is it strictly the people that work at the township themselves?
Strictly the people at the township. Now, the people who are the directors of these other organizations or groups will actually come before Bill Dunn and probably the treasurer and the clerk, more likely, in terms of their review. So, so anyway, they both agreed to do that, and it was approved. Addison and Oxford, let me see, Youth Assistance Sponsorship. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a youth program that goes on, which is for at-risk kids. And they appropriate funds for this. And So Joe Ferrari said, well,
Does this have to do with Crossroads for Youth, or is that a separate thing?
no, I think it's a separate thing, but I think they might get some funding out of it too. I'm not sure.
Okay,
I do know that that's state funded as well.
okay.
So, but just for you folks out there, the township has appropriated for 2017 about $11,000, and for 2018, 2019, and 2020, you're between $11,000 and $12,000 per year for this program. They've been doing this for years, so they felt it was a good
Good program.
Yep. So that was approved, and let me see, poll location. Yeah, Curtis Wright. He stood up and he said, he said we really didn't have enough space. He said for precinct 1, which was held at 22 Burdick Street.
Oh, those polls.
Yeah, voting polls. Yes, voting polls.
Not light polls.
Not light polls, voting polls. And anyway, he says, we had to cram everybody in there like sardines. He said it just don't work. So he said we approached the United Methodist Church on East Burdick Street, and they agreed, provide their facility for the November 8th general election. So you folks
good.
in precinct 1, you will go this time over to the United Methodist Church.
Take a pew.
On Burdick. Yeah, there'll be plenty of pews there for, I'm sure. And if you want to stay later, they do treat you pretty well over there. So that's a good thing. You won't have to, take a number this time.
Well, some say that voting is a religious experience.
Yeah, they do, don't they? I'd like to know who those people were. But anyway, I would say it's a very religious experience, being I won by 4 votes.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So that's a good thing. You
Squeaky.
don't think that your vote doesn't count, folks. So you get out there on November 8th and vote. Bill Dunn thanked the election volunteers that operated in August election for the primary. And Curtis Wright said if it weren't for these people that volunteer, he said it would not be successful. And he said we've got a good group of people. So very nicely said. Budget workshop, trustees and staff. They said to do their homework for the budgets, and they went through that. And by the way, they did do the homework for the budgets. I've never seen a group of people who had their act together in terms of budgetary. They went through the list like a roller coaster going down a hill, and they had all the numbers in place, all the proper statements in place, and it was all approved up to this point. And they had about 8, 9 items roughly.
Oh, that's
on the budget.
pretty slick,
So,
considering how complicated that can be.
And they do a good job at the township. Good job out there, guys. Anyway, let's talk about the second meeting. Second meeting was at the Oxford Village Council. Sue Bassarded, of course, is the president. Eric Dolan serves on that board. Maureen Helmuth and Rose Bema, and Tom Kinnis actually is the, what do they call it, under sheriff?
Appointee.
Under president. He's
Under-
the under person. He's
Pro
the
tem?
next pro tem. He's
Pro
the
tem.
next guy.
Pro
That's
tem.
what they call him. Pro tem.
Pro tem.
Yep. And actually, Tom Kinnis is the only guy out there who didn't get his papers filed in order to run in the November election.
Uh-oh.
But I heard from very good sources today that he has filed his papers for
a write-in?
write-in. So, but his name will not appear on the ballot.
You have to file papers for a write-in?
You do.
You just can't simply write your name in?
No. They
Why
want
not?
to make sure that you're from the village,
Okay.
how long you've lived in the village. You don't have a police record. No, that leaves you out.
Oh.
But anyhow, that's the way it works. And yeah, he did turn it in. So, but people will have to write his name on the ballot.
If that's the case, how did you get elected?
I said it was God's intervention. That's the way
I tell
worked.
you.
It was, okay. So they started with, speaking of that, pledge and the prayer. Is a good thing. And they approved the agenda right off the bat. And then they said, are there any presentations? And when we talk about presentations, we'll talk about it when we come back right after this. Christian Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And we are talking about what went on at the Oxford Village Council meeting on September 13th.
Right.
And we worked our way right up to presentations, and there was a presentation given by Mike Sowald, who's Sergeant Sowald with the Village Police Department. And he had the distinguished duty to present an award for Officer Grinch, a lady
Grinch?
police Grinch, yep,
Okay.
Grench, and she's a lady police officer, and Officer Owens, who is a reserve officer. Now they were called on an emergency to a home in Oxford, and when they arrived, they were there before the EMTs got there, and they discovered that there was a gentleman in his 60s who was in full cardiac arrest at the time.
Uh-oh.
And so they immediately started to administer CPR. By the time the EMTs got there, they were able to get a heartbeat and breathing.
Do police cars have defibrillators with them?
That's a good question which they brought up. And by the way, the township is going to purchase some for the Sheriff's Department.
Excellent.
I'm going to purchase, I believe, 2 of them for certain police cars that are out on patrol.
Mm-hmm.
And they range anywhere, I think, from $1,700 to $2,000 in that area. And suggested at that time, Bill Dunn, that maybe the village should get them as well.
Not cheap, but neither is life.
No, it isn't. And if it saves one life, I mean, it's done its job. So anyway, they did talk about this a little bit. Of course, the village is kind of tight on funds, but they'll find a way to do this probably. There are a lot of very good citizens out there, such as yourselves out there, that make donations, or such things. And
This one would last for a long time.
Yeah. And our police department in Oxford, they do a great job, and our township sheriffs, Oakland County, they do a great job as well. So, and as the sheriff's department pointed out, their officers are trained, on using these defibrillators, and and many times they're on the scene, much before the EMTs. So, good thing. They're watching out for you folks out there.
Wonderful.
So, they got a standing ovation, by the way, for the award. Pretty nice. And the room was packed.
Excellent.
You're going to say, why was the room packed?
Why was the room packed?
Okay, because
Was it a torches and pitchfork meeting?
it kind of was, because one of the issues they were talking about is the rental inspection. Yeah, and there were a lot of...
The elephant in the room.
Right, and there were a lot of landlords there. But before that, Rod Charles, he stood up and he said, well, the Lone Ranger Festival, obviously it was a great success. We pointed that out before. But he said, I want to point out now that on Thursday, September 29th at 7 p.m. at Boulder Point Golf Club, that they're going to interview 9 candidates who are running for school board. So you folks want to catch that. That's going to be Thursday, September 29th at 7 p.m. at Boulder Point Golf Club. There are quite a few people running for that.
Now, the
for
school board
positions.
election is not the same or in the same time slot as the national election, is it?
It is.
It is?
It is. I believe it'll be on, I'm pretty sure it'll be on the same ballot.
Yeah, because often school board elections are kind of off cycle.
Yeah, sometimes they are, but I think this time, the expense involved, I believe it'll be on the
Okay.
same. So anyway, you folks have any question about that, do check with your local voting office. That would be the village, 22 Burdick Street. Or you can check with the school also, they'll tell you. So anyway, you have it. Public hearing, rail inspection was the next big thing. Bob Davis, he gave a presentation of what the new ordinance would be.
Bob Davis is the
He's the
lawyer
attorney.
on retainer.
You got it. He's a lawyer on retainer. And by the way, he was there in 2013 when this issue first came up. And guess why? Just because it was turned down then doesn't mean it's not going to raise this, as you say, ugly little head later. And it did. Buck Kreiderman was one of the first people to speak to this. And one of the things that he said is the ordinance, he said, does it reflect requirements of what the Michigan code does, the Michigan Builders Code? He said, are we required to bring our rentals up to new home construction requirements? And that was a question that actually, I think, I'm trying to think the answer to that question. It wasn't the attorney, but
Does this apply only to new facilities or to
No.
newly rented facilities?
it applies to everyone who has a rental. they want it from a safety standpoint. They want to know exactly who the rentals are.
Does that somehow interfere with ex post facto or not?
It could. And here's the thing, there are already laws and regulations that also protect both the landlord today and the renter, and state books and on the county books.
Okay.
So
Do these exceed those laws?
they do, because what these people would be required to do, all these property owners would have to be to register. They will have, scheduled inspections, and I believe there's a fee for the inspection, but if they don't find anything wrong, you don't have to pay the fee, something along that line. Excuse me, which was a major concern before. One of the questions came up that, well, if I have knob and tube electrical in my home, it's an older home, and he said, do I have to upgrade the whole home?
I know what a knob is.
electrical
What's a
code.
tube?
Knob and tube, they run side by side with each other. One's hot and one's negative line.
Knob and tube.
Yeah, they're round about the size of your finger here that run through the house. They're the old system they used to
Bare
have.
wire?
No, those are the tubes that are on them, shield.
Okay.
So,
I'm just not familiar with the term.
right, excuse me, excuse me. But anyway, so the answer to that was, if it's a hazard, yes, you will have to change it. If it's a hazard, so that
Is knob and tube considered a hazard in and of itself?
there have been cases where there have been fires caused, from the older homes by not having, two wire in the ground,
Okay.
running through your house. So anyway, it is something that you folks, if you have knob and tube system in an old home, I know it's quite a job to change, but you should from a safety standpoint,
If you hope to sell it.
if you hope to sell it. Well, that actually is one of the major things, that people look at is electrical
Sure.
service, in the home, along with insulation, of course. Mark Young, the jeweler downtown, he questioned a warrant that would be required because under the existing program, you have to get a warrant before you can go in and you can, inspect.
So
So
you're not really just talking about residential renters, but also for
You're not talking
buildings that are leased to other businesses.
you're not talking residential at all, other than if it's a rental.
Right.
Which, brought up a question. What about the guy next to you? He's not inspected, but his house has got 15 violations in it. Are you going to inspect his home?
How do you know it's a violation if it hasn't been inspected?
Well, because most people that understand the codes can look at it and see. For example, Chuck Snyder was at this meeting. Chuck says, hey, I want to talk. He said, I went through, the village buildings here. He said, I can tell you right now, and I have them written down, there are 15 violations right here in the village.
Yeah.
He said, you're talking about putting an ordinance, he says, on these people that are leasing or renting, and he said, and you don't have your own house in order.
Right.
So he was pretty
But just
pretty
getting back to what I was
adamant
saying, does this also apply to businesses that lease space?
about any rental would.
Lease or
It's
rental?
business or, yeah. If it's a lease, it's a rental.
Okay. Just slightly
No.
different.
It's a play of terms is all.
Yep.
That would be what it is.
Well, I mean, differentiating between a business and a
Right.
private residence.
Right, but this is very much concentrating on, these homes that have been remodeled and now rented out.
Sure.
So, anyway, that's true. Anything that's leased is rented, so be it. We'll talk about that when we come back. Well, that does it pretty much. What's coming up next?
Well, on 9/27 at 6:30, the Oxford Board of Education is meeting at Lakeville Elementary School. And on 10/3 at 7 p.m., the Oxford Township Zoning Board of Appeals at 7 o'clock that same day, the Village of Leonard Council, and on 10/4 at 7 o'clock, the Village of Oxford Planning Commission.
This is Minutes by Minutes. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
Catch you next time right here.